We today are going to talk about preschool development and the developmental milestones. If you have a kiddo under the age of 3 and you're curious about their milestones as well, you can always visit our website or our YouTube channel, because we do have kind of the mirror version of this workshop on there for infants and toddlers. So it's nice to be able to see kind of that progression from birth to 5. And so this session today is really going to be focused on those kiddos between the ages of 3 and 5. So my name is Lauren. I am the Family Support Specialist with Child Care Answers. So in my role, I support families, particularly those that have kiddos under the age of 3. And then children with special needs. My role is really individualized parenting support workshops and then helping connect families to childcare. And then Jamie is our family engagement specialist, and her role really focuses on the 3 to 5-year-olds, and then as well as children with special needs, and then helping make that connection off to school once they head to kindergarten. So today I'm actually going to be sharing Jamie's presentation that she created. Both of us are resources to you. We collaborate on a lot of support for families. So between the two of us, we can meet the majority of family needs. So Child Care Answers is also part of a larger network of childcare resource and referral networks. So we are housed in Marion County, and we cover Marion, Hendricks, and Hamilton. But there is a resource and referral agency across the entire state that covers all of the counties. We all work hand in hand with each other, so that transition between agencies is very seamless. So Child Care Answers is also active on social media. We're on most social media platforms. If you don't follow us, do it. We post a lot of really great stuff, including our Family Fridays every Friday. And then all of the registration links to all of our workshops are on there as well. So with that being said, we'll jump into the information on developmental milestones. So what are developmental milestones? What brought you here? What are these things that you hear about regarding your child's development? And behavioral and cognitive and physical milestones are all really just checkpoints in a child's development as they grow. They're the core skills that children reach as they grow and they develop. These are things that we see every day, like saying their first word, walking, waving, putting together a puzzle, all of these types of things. And they typically build off of each other as children grow. So an example of this is an infant milestone, maybe around rolling over. Toddler milestone is on walking, and then the preschool milestone for physical development would be doing things like running and beginning to skip. So you can kind of see how they begin to kind of build off of each other. Milestones are also kind of checkpoints in development, so that it's important to know kind of where your child's at. But at the same time, children develop at their own pace. So some children are going to reach milestones slightly later, and some will reach them slightly earlier. Because of this, it's really difficult to compare children with each other. And it's easy to do, but we shouldn't do it. I find myself comparing my 2 kiddos all the time of like, well, when your brother was this age, these are the things that he was doing. But you can't. Every child is so different. And oftentimes, one child will be ahead in one area of development, where another will be ahead in another area. So it's really important that you look overall at a child's whole development and whole self, because you may have one child that's developing faster in their physical skills and another that's excelling at their social emotional skills. My son, when he was a baby, he had a pincher grasp at 6 months old, which is not typical, but he wasn't walking until he was about 16 months old. So his fine motor was more developed than his gross motor. It was quicker at developing. He also had really early language. So you can kind of see how you take a step back and you look at whole development, how it's important to look at all of the pieces and how they work together. So the Center for Disease and Prevention Control, or the CDC, has a series of milestone checklists for families. If you go to the CDC's website, they have it, it's called Act Early. And it's just as easy to Google CDC Milestones and they will pop right up as the first search results. So these are all free resources for families on how you can monitor your child's growth and development. They also have an app, which I find to be easier than the printable checklists. And they also have a booklet that you can order for free that tracks your child's development from birth to 5. So that's really helpful. Not only does it have how your child's developing, a checklist to say, yes, my child's reached these skills, but it also has a list of red flags for your child's development. And these are things that if your child is doing any of them or not doing any certain behaviors, that is just check-ins with your pediatrician to say, hey, here are some things that I'm noticing. Sometimes it's just typical. Sometimes it's just needed like an extra little push or support. And sometimes it could be a red flag for other things. But they're really great ways to check in, because the earlier we support development, the easier it is to correct any sorts of delays in development. And so with these checklists, you have the opportunity to track and understand your child's progress. Each milestone has a window of development that most children will follow, because your child may start walking earlier or later. It's really hard to compare to siblings. And so that's why it's important to have a checklist that's specific to every single child, to help you understand their progress, their development, identify any areas of strength and growth, which sometimes we think when we look at developmental milestones, we're only looking at the areas where our child needs extra support, but it's also just as important to look at those areas where they're excelling and then determine if there's any additional support that's needed. So as you think about your child's development, or children's development, if you have multiple children, let's kind of take an opportunity to think about and reflect on the things that they're doing. I have 2 kiddos. I have a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old. And my 8-year-old just was buying Christmas presents for his siblings and his cousins. And it was really awesome to see kind of that burst of social awareness and empathy, where he was really in tune with what other people liked and started to choose things based on that rather than the things that he liked. Just a few years ago, my son would have bought a present for his dad or his sister that he wanted. He bought him a stormtrooper a few years ago, so clearly it was something he wanted. And this year he bought his sister Uno, which is her favorite game in the whole wide world. And then he bought my dad some wiffle golf balls because they always play with them in his yard and lose them. And I thought that those were really sweet, kind of looking at social emotional development as kind of this leap from being all about me to now seeing and reflecting other people's feelings and wants and needs in that. So I thought that that was pretty awesome to see. Warmed my mommy heart. So we have, Jacqueline said my 1-year-old is just starting to try more words aside from mama and dada and using his lalas. Oh, I love those first couple of words and when they can actually tell you what they want. And he's learning to walk, which is amazing. And then her 3-year-old is on the wait list for Head Start. That's awesome. I hope that that wait period is short. And then Ruth says, feeling better and socializing. She's 4 years old. She's also reading. That's my daughter is actually just starting to sound out words, and she's really into letter sounds. So I'm right there with you in that piece of development, Ruth. It's pretty great. Now she thinks she can read everything, right? She thinks she like knows everything. And I'm like, whoa, slow down, sister. you read Matt Sat. Like, let's slow down. Let's try not to make this development go any quicker than it needs to. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for sharing that. So we're going to examine the milestones in 4 different areas. These are the areas that the developmental milestones are broken out into. So we have social emotional development, language, cognitive, which is all about kind of thinking skills, and then physical development. So these are the 4 domains that all the milestones are broken out into within the CDC milestones, whether it's the 2-month milestones or the 5-year milestones. So these, we'll start with social emotional development. So children between the ages of 3 and 5 are rapidly growing. Their milestones are kind of just shooting forward, especially in their social and emotional development. They're really into friendships. They're really into imaginative play. They're showing affection towards their friends. They really care about what their friends are doing and what they feel. They will start wearing clothes that they know their friend will like certain characters. And they're going to show concern when their friends are sad. They're very peer oriented at this age. So this is kind of the shift from the toddler years to the preschool years. Is the toddler years, they liked older kids. They thought they were cool, but the parents were the coolest. Parents are not the coolest anymore, unfortunately. Their peers are the coolest, or older siblings are the coolest. That they really have this profound understanding of wanting to be social, which is really cool. Also around age 3, they're beginning to make tremendous strides in understanding the concepts of mine versus theirs. So if you think about your 2-year-old, it's all about me, mine, 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 mine. If you think about the toddler property laws, it's like what once was mine was mine. If it looks like mine, it's mine. If I think it's mine, it's mine. If it's in a set of things, they all belong to me. And now we have this understanding of mine versus theirs, which allows us that beginning stage of sharing. And sharing is really about taking turns. My turn, your turn, which evolves into turn-taking games. And this just accelerates as they get older. Like I said, my 4-year-old, her favorite game is Uno. Big fan of Uno, and she has some pretty good strategy when it comes to playing Uno. And they also are really into doing things themselves. So they're dressing themselves. They can start getting things themselves, even if it makes a mess. My daughter got herself some apple cider yesterday, and so you can imagine the mess, but she did it herself. And so I wanted to praise that opportunity that she did it herself, even though she made a mess. And they get upset when the routine changes. So it's really important to prepare them for transitions and to be aware that if you're rushing a transition, there's probably going to be a meltdown. 4-year-olds are beginning to decipher between real and make-believe, which often presents itself as lying. And they tell these stories, and so then the adult lens is that they're lying. And really, it's just their mind trying to decipher what's real and pretend. And they start to be able to have this understanding when they're watching movies of what's real and what's not real, which is key because that can help limit kind of nightmares or being scared of things that aren't real, because they have this understanding now that's starting about what is real and what's not real. They cooperate with other children. They want to play peer games and turn-taking games even more, but they create rules around games. Rules aren't always fair, but if everyone is into it, it's okay. The rules will probably be like, I get 12 cards, but everyone else has to have 50. And I'm going to win because of that. But if everyone else is cool with it, then go with it. They love doing new things, and they really like to share what they're into. So it's important to listen and provide feedback when they're sharing. Around age 5 and in that 5th year, they can really now understand the difference between real and make-believe. So they were starting to figure it out, and now they've got it. They're also more likely to agree with rules instead of making them up or trying to cheat. They're like, okay, fine, this is how a game's played and I'm gonna go along with it. They can sometimes be demanding and at other times cooperative because they know what they want. And they're also showing more independence. So giving them opportunities to do things themselves and to be able to be more independent in the way that they do things. Let them pack their own lunch for school. Let them help make dinner. Let them choose their own clothes. Tell them, like, would you like to read a book first or brush your teeth first at bedtime? And give them those opportunities to make a lot of choices. So as you support your child's social emotional development, there are some really great books that you can read that kind of go along with supporting them in these areas. So books around belly breathing or taking deep breaths, books that identify big feelings like worrying or frustration or anger, and then being able to use colors to identify their feelings and emotions. So they're really starting to kind of recognize feelings and emotions in themselves and then verbally articulate those to you because they've read stories and they've had conversations. So you can get your phone out if you're on a computer and scan this QR code, or you can go to our website, childcareanswers.org, to our resource center, or you can scan this once I send the recording. But this is going to take you to a page that dives deeper into supporting emotional regulation in your child. You'll find throughout the presentation that there are a couple pages that I have these QR codes, or that Jamie added these QR codes. I cannot take credit for that. That helps take you to kind of additional information on certain topics. So language development. This is another area that's just booming in ages 3 to 5. It's amazing to watch them develop language, to listen to them develop language, to have conversations and to hear what's inside of their little heads. So our 3-year-olds, they're following 2-step directions pretty well. They're naming most things. They know their first and last name. They have at least 1,000 words. They're talking, right? They're talking a lot and they're sharing a lot of things. They're compliant with rules most of the time. They can follow routines like go wash your hands and then sit down for dinner. That doesn't mean that they're always going to follow them, but they can, and that's the difference. Our 4-year-olds know some basic rules of grammar. They love singing. They sing songs by memory. Additionally, they know their first and last name and often some other indicators like maybe their middle name, their age, those types of things. Your name, their siblings' names, your age, whether it's your actual age or an age that they've given you. And then they understand more complex questions. Using questions like, I wonder what would happen if, or tell me what would happen if we mixed A and B together, what would happen? Or if I put this one more block on top, what might happen? And they're able to answer those more complex questions and come up with kind of theories behind it. Our 5-year-olds are using future tense correctly. They're speaking very clearly. They know their name and address, and again, more indicators around who they are as a person and their family. And we're using very complex sentences. They say a lot and they have a lot to say and think about things. So talk, and talk some more. So ask questions about their day, what they see and experience, instead of just, how was your day? Because then you're going to get fine. So ask specifics like, who did you play with today? Or what was the favorite part of your day? or tell me about lunchtime, or ask them specifics related to what you know that they did. So where did the dog go? Or what did you do at the park? So that you can begin to have conversations and have some back and forth as you're supporting this give and take within conversations. So if you want to know other ways to support their language, including how to model bigger sentences, teaching them new words, working on turn taking, this QR code again will take you to our page on language and literacy development that has lots and lots of resources on supporting your child's language and literacy development. So cognitive development. So it's important to note here that all 4 domains are critical to kindergarten readiness. Sometimes families focus heavily on cognitive development because it's traditionally like your ABCs and your 1, 2, 3s. But research has really shown that one of the biggest markers of kindergarten readiness isn't cognitive development, it's actually social emotional development. So this domain is important, but it builds off of the other domains. And if your child has these skills, but they can't socialize with others, that is difficult to fix later on in life. So a child can always learn later their shapes and their colors and their ABCs, but it's very hard to learn social and emotional development if they haven't started with that foundation. So don't focus as heavily on this area as you might on social, emotional, and language. So 3-year-olds, what we would expect is that they have a foundation in counting to some degree. That means they understand what 2 is, the difference between 1 and 2. For a toddler, 2 is more than 1. And a 3-year-old understands that 2 is 2. They also are beginning to draw people with 2 to 3 body parts rather than just kind of scribbling or this kind of lump. Oftentimes there is a circle with 2 arms that come out of the head and sometimes 2 legs that come out of the head. Because if you think about a 3-year-old looking up at someone, they don't see a torso. It looks like there's legs coming out of their head. They're copying circles and lines with the pencil. They're working on their fine motor skills, and they can build towers of more than 6 blocks. So these are cognitive skills. Nowhere on here says they know all their colors and their shapes and their letters and their ABCs. Like these are the foundational cognitive skills that we should be expecting at 3. 4-year-olds understand the idea of counting. They can draw a person with 3 to 4 or more body parts. They're copying letters, oftentimes the letters that are meaningful to them. So the first letter of their name, M, D, those are the letters that are most kind of meaningful. And they understand the idea of same and different. Our 5-year-olds are counting 10 or more things. They understand that 1-to-1 correspondence. So they're being able to touch 10 things and count 1 to 1, 2 to the next one, 3 to the next one. They can draw a person with at least 6 body parts. So their drawings become more complex. They're beginning to print some letters and numbers independently. And they can copy and create geometric shapes. So they can make a circle, they can make a square, they can make a rectangle. So again, nowhere on there says that when they go off to kindergarten, they should know all their letters and their shapes and their colors and their letter sounds. Those are all things that they can learn in kindergarten if this language and social emotional has been the foundation. And play is the best way to support your child's cognitive development. So play-based learning is the idea that learning happens as a child plays and interacts with toys and materials and people in the environment. Play engages young children and develops approaches to learning, and it promotes curiosity, initiative, problem solving, and it requires a lot of focus and attention, which if we think about what do we want from our child as they get older in an academic setting, we want them to be curious, to be able to problem solve, and we want them to be able to focus. And those all happen through play and not through sitting down and doing flashcards or forced reading before they're ready. So an example of play-based learning is that your child draws on a blank piece of paper rather than coloring in a coloring sheet. And you ask them about the drawing to promote storytelling. Tell me about your picture. What does your picture say? Tell me about the words and I will write them down. I was looking at my daughter's old artwork from her 3's classroom the other day, and she drew circles around like this in a lot of different colors. And her teacher asked her, "What did you make?" And the dictation at the bottom of her paper, where her teacher was taking her words and putting it down into writing, said rainbow circles. It's like, it's exactly what's on this paper is rainbow circles. But I would have never said, "Oh, you drew rainbow circles," because if I had said that without her saying it, she would have been like, "No, that's a dog." Like, I'm so sorry. And so instead, ask them, "Tell me about your picture. Tell me what this is. Let me write down the story that goes along with this." Additionally, singing and dancing provide opportunities to experiment with things like counting, focus attention, and patterns. There's a lot of math in singing and dancing. And so those are really great play-based ways of learning those foundational counting skills, one-to-one correspondence, and early patterning. And the last domain is physical development. So watching your child run and jump and play as they build confidence is what physical development is really all about. So by 3, your child should be able to climb well. And I know all of you parents are thinking, my 1-year-old knows how to climb well. And yes, 1-year-olds climb a lot. But what they mean here is that they can really climb like a play structure. They can navigate a play structure. A toddler can climb up to your countertop to get snacks. This is a different kind of climbing. They're running easily. They're pedaling a tricycle. So they're having the ability to cross midline, to really think about how to use both legs together. And they're walking up and down stairs, 1 foot on each step, instead of like walking onto one step, both feet onto the next step, both feet on the next step. They're walking up and down steps as if we walk up and down steps as well. 4-year-olds are standing on 1 foot for 2 seconds, so they have some sort of balance. They're able to hop on 1 foot. They can catch a ball most of the time, and they're pouring and cutting with supervision. A 4-year-old does not cut at age 4 without having practiced previously. And this is really true for all developmental milestones, but this is one that I like to point out. Like, I know that it's scary giving a 2 or a 3-year-old a pair of scissors. I get that. Give them Play-Doh scissors and some Play-Doh. Play-Doh scissors hardly cut anything, so you're good there, and they can still work on those skills of cutting. But they don't learn how to cut the very first time that they're given a pair of scissors. They don't learn how to draw and scribble the very first time that they're given a writing material. Just like if they've never had the opportunity to walk or run, the first time you put them down, they don't just start running. So really giving them the opportunity to practice with supervision a lot of these skills so that they can have the ability to master them as they get older. And then our 5-year-olds can stand on 1 foot for 10 seconds. They have a higher ability to be able to balance. They're doing things like hopping and galloping and skipping. They can swing independently. Again, they can. A 5-year-old has the ability to pump their legs and to swing, but sometimes it's just all about experience and desire. That's kind of temperament related, that just because one 5-year-old can do it doesn't mean that all of them can do it. They're using a fork and spoon independently, and they can use the toilet on their own. You'll notice that toileting is just now coming up at age 5. The CDC milestones are very intentional, that they don't discuss toileting until this point, really giving a child the opportunity to develop toileting skills. So by age 5, a child should be able to independently use the toilet. And we know that toileting takes a really long time to develop because it's so complex. It's not just stopping and sitting on the potty and going potty. It really is this evolution from understanding my body to being able to wait and hold it, to eliminating, to learning those pieces like wiping, staying dry while I'm sleeping, holding it for extended period of times, initiating toileting. So they don't even address it as a milestone until age 5, which means that according to the milestones, the CDC milestones, that if a child isn't using the toilet on their own before this point, it is not an area of concern. After this point, it would be, but before this point, it is not. And I think that's something important to point out. So some ways that you can build physical development around the house is creating forts, playing games like the floor is lava, trying out yoga poses, and there's some great YouTube channels for kids yoga, doing arts and crafts like drawing, sculpting with Play-Doh, or beading, and then giving your child some simple chores to do, like setting the table or folding laundry. And then here is a whole handout on outdoor play, especially as it gets cold outside, that you might not want to go outside, but your child does, and your child needs to be outside. And there's no bad weather, just poor clothing. So they're not cold, you're cold. Put a hat and gloves on and go play outside. So as we talked about typical development, you may be wondering then, like, should I be concerned about my child's development? Or, oh, my child's not doing that. So when should you be concerned? Or when should you have those conversations with the pediatrician? So the CDC does have a lot of resources around this topic, and that's pretty much why the milestones checklists were created in the first place. They were created in order to find those gaps in development to support a child as quickly as possible. So the very first thing you should do if you're worried about your child's development is to complete the developmental checklist, whether it's on the computer, you print it off, whether it's the app, start completing it. That way you'll know kind of where your child falls developmentally. So if there's one little area where your child might not be hitting yet, that doesn't necessarily mean there's an area for concern, but it's an opportunity to have conversations with your pediatrician, because oftentimes it's just a little bit of support to help them reach those milestones. So if you're concerned, it's best to start early. So again, have those conversations, observe and track your child's behaviors, and share those concerns with your doctor. Oftentimes while child visits, they're getting just a teeny tiny snapshot into who your child is. My son has ADHD, so at the doctor, they don't see a lot of that because we're not there very long. So I've had to share our concerns, talk about behaviors in different settings, because they're just getting a snapshot. So it's important that you advocate and you share with your doctor. Ask about developmental screenings or evaluation options if you are truly concerned, and then ask for a referral. So if your child is under 3, so children ages birth to 2, that referral will go to First Steps. So First Steps will provide early intervention services for children under 3. After age 3, then it's your local public school who can offer that evaluation for free, and then possibly provide additional supports depending on if your child qualifies or not. Additionally, Child Care Answers is here to help as well. So we're happy to meet with you via Zoom, share resources online, have those conversations where you can say, you know, I'm not really ready to talk to my pediatrician, but these are some things that I'm seeing. And we can help you kind of make sense of what you're seeing, provide you provide you additional resources and support, as well as making those referrals on your behalf as well, if we find that that might be best. So you can scan this QR code to get to our family information form, or go to our website and fill out our form. And then I'm going to have Jamie's email up on the screen in just a second. And you can always just email her directly as well, especially if it has to do with a kiddo over 3. If it has to do with a child under 3, I'm your gal, and Jamie can just kind of pass your email on to me. I know for me as a parent, it's really nice to take the pressure off of those academic skills. We don't want to do everything for the kindergarten teachers. We want to leave them something to do. So what we want to do is really raise that child who wants to learn, who's curious and ready, so that they can kind of take off once they go to school, rather than kind of focusing on those academic skills. But I want to thank you all for attending today's workshop. Again, if you're curious about infant or toddler development, those resources are online as well. So we have the same webinar tailored to those different age groups as well. We do have a question that popped up, that what should I do to prepare my 3-year-old for preschool? And the best thing you can do is to work on turn taking, work on building his or her independence, supporting language development, and those emotional skills. So when your child is upset, labeling those feelings and emotions, saying, you know, I see that you're mad. I know that you're mad because your face is red and you're squeezing your fists. Let's take a deep breath. It's okay to be mad. It's not okay to hit mommy. It's not okay to throw our toys. So providing that outlet to say, like, it's okay to feel this way, but it's not okay to use our feelings in this manner. To read a lot of books. And then just providing those emotional words alongside of that. He's labeling everything as being scared recently. So he is starting to understand kind of real and pretend, but doesn't have that full understanding yet. So when he, like, I'll give you an example. My daughter, when she would watch Monsters, Inc. at this age, she then started to think that there were monsters that were going to come out of her closet, because she didn't understand that monsters aren't real and what you're watching is pretend. So she started having a lot of those fears. My son is a very anxious person. So things like weather, wind, it's a windy day today, so I'm sure he's going to come home feeling anxious, all bother him because of the unknown. So it can be kind of that fear of the unknown. So a lot of self-talk and helping give him the words, like, I understand that you're scared. You are safe. Here, like, let's talk about this. And then helping him differentiate between real and pretend can help with that as well. There may also be some more in-depth resources on our page on emotional development that can help kind of tap into some other strategies there as well. So I appreciate you guys all being here today. I look forward to seeing you guys all in the future, and take care.